So, for everyone who's joining us today, I'd like to introduce Sujata. Sujata is currently working as a CEO at Jennison. She's also a member of Board of Trustees, Victoria Convention and Events Trust, and advisory board member, Cambridge Australia Advisory Board. So, Sujata is here with us today, and we're going to talk about her journey into board roles and in executive leadership roles. So, Sujata, my first question to you is, can you share a little about your leadership journey and what led you to pursue board roles in Australia?
Thanks, Ayesha. Very good question. So, in terms of my leadership journey, I think it transcends across three countries and three continents. I started off in India, moved to the UK, and moved to Australia. So, looking back about 2013, when I moved to Australia from the UK, I was transferred here as a founding CEO of a company which is majority owned by Cambridge University Press and Assessment in the UK, which is one of the world's largest assessment and publishing companies. And they bought a company in Melbourne, which was delivering assessments for global mobility of healthcare professionals. So very much the job was very much a transformation job, looking at very much how can I actually revive this product, which is excellent, but has suffered from years of neglect and underinvestment. So through all those challenges, I could see that as a product, which was called the Occupational English Test, OET, that the product had a fantastic product market fit in the sense that a large number of English-speaking OECD countries were having increasing dependency on foreign-trained healthcare professionals, and the professionals had to have the English-speaking skills to be able to ensure they can communicate effectively with patients and carers, given that poor communication can often be fatal in healthcare context. And that's the reason I think, I saw through that, and despite the challenges, I ensured that, no, how do I make that strategy come to reality? And that required having a clear goal, what I used to call in those days the moonshot goals, very much inspired by John F. Kennedy's vision of moonshot in the 1960s when he said that by the end of the decade, I'll put a man in the moon. How we put the man, we don't yet know. So very much that vision of yes, OET can be the global leaders in healthcare professionals, global mobility in 5 years' time. And I'll be taking the small steps towards the 5 years that will require to make sure that I can identify what is the base I need, what are the small wins I need to win, who are the partners I need, who are the key advisory committee members and support I need. So through that, I think amount of experience I gathered about the experience and the importance of being able to navigate through ambiguity, the importance of actually having the right partners and right supporters who actually support your business and your vision. And also the importance of understanding that as an organization, when you're on a big transformation journey, some things will go wrong, some things will go right. And sometimes transformation feels like 2 steps backward, 1 step forward. But as long as you have that clarity of vision and goal, it's really important that you keep marching forwards, very much taking the learnings along the way and in the true spirit of continuous improvement. And very much I brought the same spirit to my current role as a CEO of Jennison Education Group, which is a fantastic organization in terms of the delivery of digital assessments at scale. And just today, I think I just learned a couple of hours back that at the E-Assessment Awards in London, Jennison won the awards in AI and innovation in 2 categories. One is a use of AI in content development for assessments, and one is the whole use of AI in assessment in general.
Oh,
So that's
congratulations.
all true. Thank you through Agile platform. And that again, I think is what I love about growth and transformation, that very much you have a vision, you have a goal, keep innovating and keep being good at what you are doing. And very much making sure that there will be challenges along the way, but not get deterred. And then very much all that experience in management has actually made me realize that one of the key areas where I would love to give back is my own experience as management in building and growing businesses. And how do I actually, from a different, from a board perspective, help other management, help other organizations who are on a similar journey. And that's what actually really motivated me to start on my board journey. Firstly, I started with the Bionic Institute, and which I have since moved on, but now I'm in the board and trustee of the Victorian Convention and Events Trust and also of Cambridge Advisory Board, which is more an advisory board rather than a formal board. But what I love is that how I can take my management experience and be able to, from a board perspective, without getting involved in the operational day-to-day running of the business, help management set strategy and be a second set of eyes, bring that other perspective in helping them navigate the challenges and excitements of growth, transformation, and building a business.
Well, thank you, Sujata. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. I think what I would really be interested in knowing is what do you think about visibility for culturally diverse women in the board space? What helped you become seen and considered for board positions?
I think that Aisha, that's a very, very important question, isn't it? For especially for those of us who are, coming from a culturally diverse background and leading organizations here in Australia or anywhere else in the world, right? And I would say that some of my key learnings along the way is one of the most important one is to have self-belief, which
Hmm.
is very much grounded by your own set of values and ethics as a human being, and having the self-belief of what you where you want to go, what you bring, what value do you bring, whether it's the organizations you want to work for or the friends that you make, in everything in life, what is the value that you bring, and having that intrinsic belief in those values, right? And then, of course, I think, and being confident in yourself, right? And putting yourself out there. So along the way, making sure that you are also taking those proactive steps to build those relationships, build the networks, make sure you're contacting the right people and putting yourself out there. Sometimes, especially for us as women, I think we are almost sometimes a bit more reticent to put ourselves out there. And I think I always tell my fellow women leaders, and we all tell each other, in fact, that it's really important without being overly confident to be at least confident about what you bring, what you want, and what you can, or what are you looking for, and be unapologetic about that, right? And put it out there, put yourself out there. And of course, I think I'd be lying if I didn't say, Aisha, that all of us, we all get by with a little help from our friends and
Hmm.
family. And right along my journey, I've always had great kind of mentors and champions and people in the sector and the industry who truly believed in me. And truly believing in you means that, of course, kind of,
Hmm.
supporting you, but also more importantly, telling you your gaps and being your rear view mirror in the sense things where I need to maybe, be better at or do things a bit differently as well. So I would say it's a combination of self-belief, making sure that people understand what you're looking for, building those networks, and having the right people on the journey to support your career ambitions as well.
Thank you, Sujata. I think it's quite clear where you're coming from. Women having the confidence to put themselves out there, really building relationships over time. And I think
Yeah,
it's important for us to highlight to other culturally diverse women that relationships are not built through one or two networking events. They're built gradually over a period of time. Relationships evolve
absolutely.
over a period of
Yes.
time. And I think it's really the choice that you're making every time. Who do you want to be with? Who do you want to build a long-term relationship with? What is that going to be
Exactly.
based on? Is that going to be based on trust and honesty and integrity? Are your values aligned? Are
Yes.
your ambitions aligned? Are you going to be a woman who brings up another woman, right? Are you lifting other people around you? Are you championing other women? So, very good answer. I think you've really articulated what is important in order to be seen.
Absolutely, Ash. And I couldn't agree more about your point about lifting each other. And I think all of us need to make a very conscious, deliberate decision to lift other women leaders or people generally around us, which is so important. So very well said.
So, well, how has your cultural background shaped your leadership style and the value you bring to boards?
Again, Aisha, another very good question. So, in terms of my cultural background, I mean, going back to where I was born in in those days at least, a very remote part of India, in the northeast of India, in the state of Assam. So, those of us who love our tea, you'll be familiar. Assam makes that dark aromatic tea. So, that's where I grew up. And now, when I look at my journey from the backwaters of Assam to Calcutta to London to Cambridge to Melbourne now, and I feel what has been a constant inside me has been my culture, right? My culture where I come from. And of course, as you travel around the world, your culture also, integrates, right? Depending on, as human beings, we pick up multiple identities. So there's a little bit of the Assamese girl from in the northeast of India, which will always stay with me forever. But at the same time, I pick up things in British culture I've really valued. Similarly, now I'm an Australian, so deeply value the Australian sense of work ethics, humor, and so on. So I think I see culture as an amalgamation of all my life experiences. And on top of that, of course, my husband's from South Africa. So it's a
Mm,
huge mix of culture. And I look at that as the best of all the worlds, right? And where your culture really actually makes a difference is one of the kind of common threads across all my movements around the world and the cultures I've come across is the importance of family and friends. And that's been really important, and that's really important to be grounded, because at the end of the day, as human beings, what makes us is our human connections.
mm,
And for me, I think that's always kept me very grounded, and that's been my compass. And in particular, my husband, right, who's been a great champion, who's always been supporting me and allowed me to dream big and fail many times as well, and not to give up when you fail, right? So I think that's, if I can say one thing about culture that's kept been a common thread, is that value of human connection, the value of family and friends. And also, I think I consider myself exceptionally privileged because either I've always chosen careers which have been highly commercial, where I
mm,
bring my commercial skills, but to make a difference to societies across the world. For example, in OET, when I went to the Philippines, I came across hundreds of nurses who were doing the occupational English test for a future a career in the US or Canada or UK. And some of the nurses said that because of OET, we are having these opportunities to go overseas. And as a result of that, uplift the next generation of their families back home. Similarly, here at Janison at the moment, we provide digital delivery of assessments, whether they are for selective high schools or they are for OECD exams in the past, or they are for school exams. But through digital assessment, what we do make sure that learners have the best possible chances of having the best outcome and the best opportunities in life. And for me, that's really been something, again, I take it back to my culture where I, what motivates me is that, kind of combining commercial skills to have a better outcome for communities, whether it's students or learners or healthcare professionals.
mm. No, thank you. Look, if I summarize it all, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're really saying is staying true to your roots as a culturally diverse woman, thriving in integration, diversity, and inclusion in your environment, learning about other cultures as you've moved through London and Australia, and being born in India. And a really strong theme that I'm seeing that's coming through in all your responses is really building long-term, trusting, loyal relationships that have contributed to your career.
You put it beautifully, Ayesha. Absolutely. I could have said that in 2 seconds. You put it much nicely than I have. Yes. No,
No, no, no.
thank you.
I love the depth that you gave us. I love the story that you gave us to tie it all in. All right. So, my next question to you is what misconceptions or biases did you encounter when working on board roles or in leadership, executive leadership roles? And how did you work through them?
Again, Aisha, full of good questions. Another good question. I think I have been quite fortunate, whether in my executive roles or in my board roles, where I don't believe I face any biases as such. And I've been very blessed to work with people who are, who actually support each other and lift each other up.
Mm,
But from that, what I learned, is that the importance of supporting one another and making that deliberate, because sometimes what happens, Aisha, is all of us are so busy, including, I know I do it all the time as well, right? We are always in a rush with family and
mm,
friends and busy jobs in your daily, your regular 9 to 5 job, plus your board jobs, your advisory committee jobs. You can be so busy, right? I think in that context, sometimes what happens is you may not take a pause to see what the person next to you is feeling, whether it's a board or at a management level, right? So what
mm,
I've learned is that making that deliberate, conscious decision, no matter how fast you're moving, to check on other people and see, are you doing all right? And
mm,
I think, and what I've also learned is that being a woman from culturally diverse background, especially in the old days when I was working in London, when I at a senior leader and the UK in a senior leadership level, I was one of the few ones at that level, right? So sometimes you do get self-conscious, you do get
mm,
feel awkward. And what I've learned from then, Aisha, is that everyone who's coming after me, the younger generation of culturally diverse leaders, women in particular, just reaching out to them and sometimes a kind word or gentle word of
Mm,
encouragement, right? Because it can be hard at times, but nothing that cannot be done with the support of friends and supporters. The other thing also I learned, Ayesha, that in life, me being an eternally optimistic people, there'll always be more supporters than detractors. But so don't let the detractors get you down, right?
mm,
Look, well, of course, I think I'm not saying it's okay, I'm not saying it's acceptable, but at the same time, I'm saying that everything in life will have your supporters and detractors, but lean into your supporters and lean away from your detractors.
mm. So be optimistic. And I
Yes,
think positive energy attracts more positive energy. So the more positive you
exactly.
are, rather than looking at the negatives and pulling yourself
Yes,
down, surround
yes.
yourself with more positive people and positive energy to keep lifting yourself up.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean you're never going to get down. Of course, you have to be true to your feelings and emotions. And we
Mm,
will feel down. We will feel lack of confidence at time. It's natural, it's human, but it's being able to come out of that.
mm. All right. My next question is just going a little bit more deeper into it. So, what are the unwritten rules or nuances of Australian board culture that culturally diverse women should be aware of?
I think in my experience, I would say that I mean, my board experience is only very much related to Australia. So I can't
Mm,
compare board roles in Australia versus the UK, where I was only focusing on management roles.
mm,
But this is specific to my experience in boards in Australia. I would say is the right balance, right? The right balance of how as a board director you're bringing value to the board, right? Is being able to make sure that now the right amount of conversation, the right amount of probing, the right amount of questioning, and the fine balance between very much board level query and challenges versus getting into the weeds and getting into management space. So
mm,
ensuring that no, that the balance is right, at the same time making sure that no, as board we have fiduciary duties, we are performing our fiduciary duties, asking the right questions, it right challenges, but doing that in a manner which actually is respectful and
mm,
also gives you the outcome you want. Because sometimes what you have to be very conscious is that we perform our fiduciary duties of challenging, bringing objectivity and query to management in a way that brings the best outcome and protects the business, not actually having the opposite impact that lets management shut down or brings the unlikely, sometimes the very low risk of management then shutting down, right? So I think that's what I would say the key things is about that whole balance of the right kind of questions, which are board appropriate without going down to management level, and the
mm.
right kind of challenge and queries and oversight without actually that becoming destructive.
Okay. All right. So, well, we'll move from that into another space. We're going towards the end of this. I would like you to really name top three things boards look for in emergent leaders that we often overlook, the things that we don't usually think about.
I think from my experience, Aisha, typically when what boards look for in executive leadership, one of them I would say is ability to navigate through ambiguity. Because if
Mm,
you look at our world, it doesn't matter where you are, we are at that intersection where our world is changing and
mm,
businesses are changing, right? Structurally, a lot of businesses and sectors are changing, many of them being fast-tracked by the onset of AI and how AI is changing things. That means that that certainty that probably was one of the cornerstones for probably the previous generations of work life, that is missing now because nobody really knows how AI is going to change workplace, is going to change commerce in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So as a result of that, I think increasingly one of the key skills, even myself as a board director, that I look for in executive leadership is actually the ability to navigate through that ambiguity, to
mm,
be able to see what, not through the ambiguity, still how you can keep taking your business forward. The next two set of skills I think board often looks for is kind of intertwined.
mm,
One is through that ambiguity to set a vision and strategy for the organization
mm,
and how and to be able to stress test that given that there could be the world, there could be certain outcomes for the world in 5 years, we may not know a couple of options. How does your strategy actually remain resilient irrespective of what the outcomes are? Just looking at those options and looking at what value do you bring to the market. And then secondly is once setting the strategy is actually the execution ability. Because often I think setting strategy is the easier part. Execution is the harder part, especially in a world full of ambiguity. And by successful execution, I don't mean getting it everything perfectly, because you never will get it perfectly. It's having that pragmatic approach, the resilience to be able to have that clear sight of what your goals, to be able to execute, learn from your failures along the way, and very much the whole philosophy of fail fast, learn fast, and be able to deliver on your goals. And I think those are the key three things that typically I look for. It's your ability to navigate through ambiguities, setting strategies, and executing successfully on strategies. And all of them, I would say, are wrapped up by, as a leader, are you being able to bring your people on a journey?
Mm. So
Because at
again,
the end of
we're
the
going back
day,
to the
yeah,
relationships aspect of it. All right.
yes,
So ambiguity, and interestingly, I was at a computing summit where I was speaking on an industry panel. It came up and we were talking about how AI is changing everything. And what is that one skill that every individual must have to grow? And everybody on the panel came up with critical thinking. And I think
yes,
that kind of flows so well into your response of ambiguity, because if you're
yeah,
able to think critically, because no matter what, human intellect will always be superior, right? So your artificial intelligence is actually something that is secondary to your intellect and something that's helping you get there faster. So ambiguity, then being able to think critically about it, strategize it, and then execute it, and not fearing failure, rather using it as a means of experience, learning experience, and
couldn't agree more. Absolutely,
going through a continuous
absolutely,
improvement process, going through the cycle every time and improving.
very true.
All right. So that brings me to the next one, which is, what advice would you give to culturally diverse women who feel they don't fit the mold of traditional board candidates? And as interesting as it is, I know that when I asked you to do this interview with me, I find it quite hard to find another culturally diverse woman other than myself or you who are in board roles. So it is, yeah, even now that Australia is so culturally diverse, I think there's also that aspect of awareness around board roles, more so specific to culturally diverse people, not just women, I would say. And then it's, how do we get there? Are we really the right candidate? I know for myself, I could say I had a very good friend and mentor, a very senior member of the industry who literally pushed me into it. And I didn't think I was ready for it. And I think that support and that confidence that he had in me sort of helped me and pushed me onto that journey quite early in my career. So, how would you say that culturally diverse women, what would you say to them? What is it that they could do to build that confidence, that self belief, and put themselves out there and apply for board roles?
I think, Aisha, it is, in fact, if you look at Australian boards, I think gender diversity is something that a lot of boards are actively, consciously focusing on to make sure that they bring greater diversity, right? But even a step further, I think gender diversity is still a work in progress in
Mm,
Australian boards. And if you look at gender diversity from a culturally diverse background, that's even a more rarity, as you've said, Aisha, that you've struggled to find somebody beyond you and me who's from a culturally diverse female who is actually trying to kind of looking for board roles, right?
mm,
I think one of the things that we must remember is that for any organization, whether at the executive leadership level or at a board role, we must remember that true innovation, true
mm,
excellence comes from diversity of thoughts and perspective. So from that perspective, I think us as women leaders from culturally diverse background, we have to be very confident about what we bring to the table as women, as somebody from the culturally diverse background, especially for organizations who are serving also culturally and then gender diverse customers. So the big question that I would ask board is, does your board represent the customers that you serve?
mm,
And me, as a culturally diverse female board member, what do I bring? Right? Having that confidence and self belief that my diversity of thought, my diversity of perspectives, my diversity of background actually contributes to the organization because I represent what is an increasingly multicultural society in Australia and having the self belief of what I bring. And I think One of the challenges, I was recently talking to an incredible female leader, but what she told me is initially her assumption is that she won't be successful in board roles, so why bother trying?
Mm,
So, and I think my learning with what she said is that, which I thought was really important, was put yourself out there. Don't give up on yourself before even trying. Put yourself out there, learn from the process. If you're rejected, ask for the feedback, ask for the for some good constructive feedback that can help you with your next role. And of course, build those connections who can actually help you and support you.
No, look, excellent answer. So when we wrap up, I'm going to summarize from what I've understood from your responses to my questions. I would say top of the list is building relationships, good relationships. Or should we say top of the list is self-belief?
So I
Self,
think it's a combination of self-belief and human connections, right? Because no man is an island. We live
mm,
within a board at leadership level. In your neighborhood, we exist in a bigger community, right? Those connections, you learn from the connections, you support each other. But also at the end of all the connections can only help you if you have that intrinsic belief in yourself. And by belief, I don't mean that you're always right. Is a belief means that I have a right set of values. I understand where I want to go and I'll work hard and I'll learn along the way of things I need to get better at.
no, I love that. Keep going. You're failing. It is okay. Keep getting up, be resilient, and keep going. And then along the way, really investing your time in building relationships that are
Absolutely.
long lasting and continue to learn and thrive and support other women. I feel it's really important that what we learn, we give it back. What we achieve, give back to
Absolutely.
the community. We give
Yes.
back to the Australian diversity, the Australian society as a
Yes.
whole,
Absolutely.
not
Yeah.
just as women, not just as culturally diverse women, but as responsible citizens.
Very, very well said. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you very much, Sujata, for making the time to do this with us today. And thank you for all the great advice. I'm sure that there are people who are out there, the women especially, that we're doing this for, culturally diverse women, now will be really looking forward to putting themselves out there and start to believe in themselves more.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you once again for inviting me to speak with you. And thank you for the incredible work that you are doing and Women on Boards is doing. So well done.
Thank you.